Hey everyone, welcome back to a brand new episode of LBA Talks. This is episode 3, and in today's episode we will be discussing Game of the Year predictions. We'll also be looking at some character creation plans I've got for the channel, final thoughts on Final Fantasy 16, latest Yakuza / Like a Dragon games which are being released over the next week and a couple of months' time, a discussion on if Game Pass and PlayStation Plus are they truly worth it, and also some plans to return to animation projects. So hopefully we'll get a a good discussion going today. My throat is still a bit funny. It's because I talk a lot during the day, and when it gets time to do the streams, my voice is already gone a little bit. Hey Stu, welcome to the stream. Woohoo, let's go. I know, I can't wait to get stuck into this. And also, since we are talking about Game of the Year predictions, and you are just now playing Baldur's Gate 3, I guess you'll have some opinions on if you believe it's good enough to become the Game of the Year for this year. Hello Swickful, welcome back. I'm ready. Excellent. I'm looking forward to it. I think everyone's going to have like different predictions for what games are actually not just good enough to be Game of the Year, but if they should be even considered. Because I've heard a lot of people complain like remakes such as Resident Evil 4 and Dead Space, they're not really welcomed for Game of the Year, which I think is a bit crazy because Resi 4 did a lot of work. They didn't just like update the graphics. They did a lot of they added a lot of things, changed a lot of things. So it feels like it's not on a lot of people's lists, which is a shame. But I guess we can talk more about that soon, especially with Final Fantasy 16 as well, which I'm going to talk more about because that's one of the games that I also bought this year and played a lot of it. Over 100 hours, I think. And again, it's a game that just isn't on many people's lists. It's like just gone, vanished. But it is a very competitive year. I think there's a lot of great games. Probably too many, because if you have to buy everything, you know, it's not ideal. But I guess we would all prefer a very strong year than a weak one. But it's also been sad because of all the layoffs. It wasn't just Media Molecule that have succumbed to this. Like we've also saw the Bungie over at Destiny 2. They've let a lot of people go. And I think I read something like across the whole gaming industry this year, there's been about 6,000 employees that have been let go, which is just terrible, especially when a lot of the profits apparently were record breaking. So we've got a lot of good things about gaming, a lot of great games coming out this year, but a lot of sad news at the same time, unfortunately, which I just don't get it. But here I'm just going to update the thumbnail here and we'll get going. Bring up the chat as well. Right, let me go back. Let's see what's trending today on the Dream Surfing. Oh, great! It's the same games as before. Not so good. Right, let me go back here. Right, we'll try and find something new to play through. Right, we've got the daily Dream Surf. So I'll just start off with this one. I don't think I've played this yet. Seems to be very Spider-Man inspired. So I'll kick through this one. I'll just bring the chat up just now so I can see everything. There we go. Everything's good. Stu says everyone is saying it will be. So yeah, that's Baldur's Gate 3. They're saying that's probably going to be most likely to be the game of the year. See, a lot of people say a lot of really good things about certain games. Like, for example, Alan Wake 2, right? I'm just going through all these tutorials here. I probably shouldn't skip through it so quickly. But a lot of people were given like, oh, I fell through the floor. That's not a good start. But a lot of people were given Alan Wake 2 a lot of massive praise, and it's also a game that some people are saying is actually a bit boring. So I don't know how much you can believe a lot of the hype for some games. You know, it's some games just aren't for everyone. So Baldur's Gate 3 might be the most likely game of the year, but for a lot of people, maybe it's just not their type of games, to be honest. But I'm looking forward to giving it a go, giving my own opinion, because I do like RPG games. It's just those kind of RPG games where it's more like a top-down sort of, like Dragon Age kind of thing. If you're talking about like the original Dragon Age Origins, not the sequel, they were more action orientated. But these kind of games where you need to manage a party and talk to people a lot, and even just the camera angle itself, it's not going to be for everybody. But it looks like a massive time sink. It's something that I'm probably going to have to buy at a time when I've got a lot of time, to just waste on it. Stu also says, can we talk about why base games are coming out at $70 now? Yeah, absolutely. It's something I talk about sometimes. Like, gaming is just becoming far too expensive now, and like to pay 70 quid every time, it's not so viable. Like, I'm not like a massive fan of like I was also going to talk about Game Pass and PlayStation Plus. Like, I'm not a massive fan of these services because most of the time it's like they don't always have the games you want to play, because they remove games all the time. But looking at how everything's costing like 70 to buy a new game these days, so these services are looking a little bit better now, because you can save a bit of money. And realistically, if you're going to spend 70 on a game, and then you could spend like 70 up to 100 maybe on Game Pass or PlayStation Plus, you're probably going to get more value than that one single game that costs 70. So I feel like these kind of services are destroying the game industry as well, because it puts people off from buying games. Like, you've got that Xbox, they just bought Activision Blizzard King, and now it's like all their games like Diablo and Call of Duty, a lot of people are saying like, oh, I'm not going to buy it, I'm just going to wait until it's on Game Pass. So they're going to save a lot of money, but at the same time, if we don't support these games by buying them outright, then they're not going to make as much money. And the way that everything's going right now, they're just spending way too much money to make games. So I feel like I still try and do my part. I still bought Resi 4 Remake, I still bought Final Fantasy 16, and I do have plans to buy things like Alan Wake 2 and Baldur's Gate 3 once they're maybe on a bit of a sale, or once I've got a bit more money to spare. But right now I'm just kind of playing what I've got right now, because like I was using Game Pass from a friend, and my PlayStation Plus is running out within like the next, I don't know, 4 weeks or so. And because I've increased the price for that, it's like I don't even know if I'm going to renew that either. So I might just like stick to the games I've already bought in the backlog, play a lot more of Dreams, create a lot more, and just try and not spend as much money in general. But that's how things are going in the game industry. Like, everything's just getting too expensive, and it's like you want to support all these devs, but at the same time, when things are getting far too expensive, you maybe just can't afford to buy as many games as you used to in the past. Like if games used to be like 40 quid on average, 35 maybe on the PS2, it was much more affordable, and you could take a chance on a lot of games as well. And I don't know what the pre-owned scene is like these days. Like I don't know if people are still trading games in. I don't know if that exists anymore. I don't know if they give you as much of a good deal. But I used to buy a lot of pre-owned games, mostly on the PS2, because you could buy like a bundle of three for like $7.99, or if there were better games, $11.99, or if there were like really cheap ones that nobody wanted, it was like a bundle with $3.99. So it was like, that was good because I was younger then. I didn't really have a job, so I just had pocket money. So I would only buy like games kind of new if they were like around the £20, £30 range. But I can't imagine being like a youngster these days where everything costs 70. It's like your pocket money is just not going to cut it anymore, you know? You're just going to have to stick with something like Game Pass, or just accept the games that they give you, because you just can't afford to just keep buying new games all the time. So yeah, it's the industry itself is not looking so good, but as a consumer, I feel like I need to sort of relax a bit with gaming. Don't play as many new games, or just stick to Dreams. I think gives me new life for Dreams as well. Just use that as an excuse. Swickful says, "What's your game of the year so far, LB?" Well, like I said, I've not played like all of the nominations, so things like Switch games like Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, and that Super Mario Wonder game, and I think there's Pikmin 4 as well. Like I can't really comment on those because I just can't play them. They all do look really good. And obviously things like Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, I'm a bit late because I don't think I'm going to get to play them before the award show. I think it's next month. I think it's the 7th of December, the Game Awards. So really all I've played, I did play a little bit of the Dead Space remake on Game Pass recently, but I wasn't too bothered because I felt like it was just too similar to the original. But I've played the Resident Evil 4 remake. Again, like I said, sadly a lot of people aren't going to accept it because it's a remake, which is a shame because it is a really good game. So that only really leaves me Final Fantasy 16. So I can't really say like, oh, Final Fantasy 16 is game of the year, but from what I've played, I'd probably give it to that because it does have a lot of good scope to it. I think we were talking about it last week. It's got fantastic boss battles, music. It's the combat. I think is really fun, even though a lot of people were against it because it's not turn-based or it's not more RPG enough. But I think it was a great game. Like gameplay-wise, it was really fun to play. The story was decent. I can't say too much without spoilers, but I feel like the main villain and the motivations and things were a bit cliche. It was a bit too easy. It's just like want to take over the world. It's like been there, done that. And there's a lot of the dialogue for that enemy, that main baddie, was a bit weak, I think. But I think the worst thing about Final Fantasy 16 was the fact that it had really bad side quests, like shockingly bad. Like Final Fantasy 15 had really boring side missions as well, but 16 just ramped that up to 11. It's really just like fetch quests and kill this monster or walk over here and do that. So the side missions in Final Fantasy 16 were terrible. The hunts were okay, you know, you can't really say too much about those. But the main story was good. I liked the fact that they mixed kind of semi-open world maps that were a little bit bigger. Sadly, they didn't do enough with the side missions, so they became a bit bland. But then they mixed it up with the more linear, sort of like Kingdom Hearts kind of dungeon-like levels where everything's really cinematic, and I think they had a lot of really good attention to detail with the amount of boss battles that you had, and mini bosses, and all the little scenarios. So I really enjoyed those moments in Final Fantasy 16. If we're just talking combat, the main sort of scenario, and it did give you a lot of freedom to go around and just explore the world at least a little bit. So maybe not the best Final Fantasy game, but I think definitely better than 15. And hopefully they can take a lot of the criticism with the side quests and try and do a lot of the good things they did from the main story and the boss battles, but try and incorporate that with like the world building. And if they're going to make a more open world game, then hopefully they can do it a bit more justice. Swickpo says we should. The fact that Activision are releasing Modern Warfare 3 as a full-fledged £70 release when it was literally meant to be DLC, but you know, money talks. Yeah, it's quite controversial as well. The fact that it was meant to be an expansion for Modern Warfare 2, but sadly they've decided, hey, we could make more money if we charge this as a full thing. And everything I'm reading about Modern Warfare 3 sounds so bad, because it's like, I remember people told me it's like, oh, it's a return like for all the Modern Warfare 2, the original maps, they're all coming to this Modern Warfare 3. But I read that apparently it's only like 4 maps at the beginning, and if you want the rest of the maps, you just need to stick with the game. And like every season pass, or not season pass, but every season, they're going to bring out new maps and Modern Warfare 2 original maps. So in the end, if you want to get all the content they promise, you're going to have to stick with the game for months. I don't know how long a season normally lasts, if it's like a month or a month and a half, but you're probably going to have to stick with the game for, you know, almost a year really before the next COD comes out. They're going to drip feed you all the maps and all the other content they plan to push out. So yeah, it's a bit distasteful for them to charge all that money for a game that was just an expansion pack. And now because Microsoft, you know, the Xbox basically bought them now, so it's like it looks like it's their fault, you know. But it's funny, you still see a lot of people that are like in love with Xbox, and they're still saying things like, oh, but it's now an Xbox franchise, they're taking responsibility for it now. But then when you see all these bad things coming out about it, and then they're like, oh no, but this happened before Xbox bought the studio, and you know, so it's not their fault. But you know, they're quick to say, oh, this is an Xbox franchise now, and big it up like it's going to be the best because it's on Xbox now. But I don't know, at least for this release anyway, it's just typical Activision, just doing what they want to make tons of money. Swickfo also said at this point COD has become the new Pokemon. Millions will buy it no matter what. Oh yeah, I mean that's pretty much been the case for all CODs, hasn't it? Like people just buy it. You know, it's like the new FIFA. It's like the reviews say nothing's changed, or people say it's bad. It's got like loads of glitches, and they fix some things, but then they ruined other things. But people buy it anyway. You know, it's like it's just one more game that they can play, and it'll keep them busy for another year or so. So I think people can complain about things, but they're quick to accept that all the problems are fine, you know, as long as they get a little bit of entertainment, I guess. So it's the same with FIFA and COD and everything. It's like COD is like, if we look at it objectively, you could say COD's been bad for a long time now because they're just kind of rehashing things, and they're trying new things, but they're just not as good as they used to be. And when you have a franchise like that that lasts for so long, it's like, how are they going to keep it to a high quality when there's so many games and so many different studios working on them? It's like Infinity Ward. I don't think they're as good as they used to be because a lot of the founders and a lot of the top team, they went over to Respawn over at EA to make Titanfall and Apex Legends and the new Star Wars Jedi games. So I don't even think Infinity Ward are like that big of a name anymore. And then you've got other people like Treyarch. People like them a lot because they tried to do different things. They obviously created the zombie mode. I don't know what the state of them are today. And then they've got another one called Sledgehammer Games, which they're making the new one basically, alongside Infinity Ward. But I think they're taking the lead on the story campaign. But apparently the story campaign in this new Modern Warfare 3 is terrible. It's like forget it's like 4 hours long, because COD campaigns usually aren't that long anyway. But the apparently, I've not played it, but they're saying it's like some missions are a bit like Warzone. It's basically just like an open map, and it's like you just need to complete the objectives. And that's completely against what COD normally is. Normally it's like very tight, linear, cinematic missions. And if they're all open now, and that takes up a lot of the time, it feels like they've just thrown in Warzone and they've just said, okay, we've got an environment here, let's just create some missions around it, and we'll call it a day. And then we'll just, drip feed old Modern Warfare 2 maps, which are already made. We just need to update the graphics a little bit. That'll be easy. Saves us a lot of time. We'll still charge an arm and a leg for it. And then, I just realised I could swing. I've been doing like little web things here, but I tried R2 a minute ago. It wasn't working, but it's working now. So yeah, they're not. It's not so ideal, but hey, let's see what Microsoft can do, right? Let's see if the next COD game will be any better. Who knows? Because they're always in development with different studios, so they might already have like the next COD or the next two CODs already planned out. Who knows? But I've not really played COD since like Black Ops 2. That was the last time I properly played a COD game, but it doesn't really bother me so much. But the practice of making everything so expensive and diluting the content is never good. Swickfo also says Nintendo is a good example of this. You can't buy singular retro games like the Wii Shop. You're forced to use their monthly service to play Mario Bros. 3, for example. Yeah, I'm just not a fan of Nintendo's online stuff, like their online store. It's just terrible. It's like they want to take on Game Pass and PlayStation Plus, but they always do things like at a sort of minimal level, It's like, okay, we're going to try online multiplayer, but they don't really give you a proper experience, It's always like half-assed. It's always, okay, here's online multiplayer, but it's not as good. It's not what you expect. Alright, here's a Nintendo store, but it's not as good. It's not what you expect. Subscription service, not as good, They don't, I know it's cheaper. A lot cheaper, I think. I don't know, like 50 quid a year, maybe? Maybe even less than that. Because I know it was like 20 and then for online, and then they started adding all these classic retro games, but just like PlayStation Plus, when they added the premium deluxe tier for PlayStation Plus, like I had it because I got a good offer for Black Friday. But in all honesty, like the past year, a lot of the games they've been releasing, like PS1 games, PSP games, it's just okay. There's no major games that came out. I just like that a lot of the first party games they put out, like on the PSP, like Siphon Filter games and There's a few other things. They added trophies to it, so it was a lot better to go back and play these games. But for all that money you're spending, I don't think it's worth it for a year. I think if you're going to get the premium or the deluxe, you're probably best just waiting like almost a year until they've added like a year's worth of content, and then just get like a month of it, or 3 months, and then just play what you're interested in. Because I don't think that tier is very good. So even if I had a Switch, I don't think I would get this subscription to play all these old games, especially like, sorry Nintendo, but you can emulate them all these old SNES games. So I don't know, I don't see why I would want to pay all that money to get all these really old games if they're not really doing much with them, Hey Dale, welcome to the stream. Can remember that time with the whipped cream? Well, there's many times, so I mean, which one are you referring to? It could be numerous ones. All good times though. FF16 was epic. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like, if you play all the Final Fantasy games, obviously you'll have your preferences. Some things do other things better, and maybe you prefer the turn-based combat compared to the more action-based. But I think they're all good games, and they've all got their good points, I think the only ones you can really criticize are like 13, because the level design was very linear. It was just like narrow, straight corridors, and the characters were boring, and the story wasn't that great. It just had like good music, had a decent combat system, but had a lot of problems. And then you've got 15, which was a mess of a game that somehow managed to pull it together and create something interesting. But I don't think it really stacks up that high for me. I think 16 is probably the first Final Fantasy game we've got that's been good enough to really call a Final Fantasy game. Because even though I'm not like a massive fan of 12, I think like the story in 12 is really, really bad. I still like the characters, I still like the battle system, I still felt like it was a Final Fantasy game. It's got a lot of good points. I think it's still a really good game. But it's really from 13 onwards where it kind of went a bit more downhill. But even a lot of people, they say bad things about 10, Final Fantasy 10, but you can't deny that. It has great characters, great story, still turn-based, and if you get the HD versions, you get like the Japanese edition that had all the extra content. It's the same thing with 12 as well. You get the HD remaster, you get a lot of the extra content that you never got before, so they're great games. But 16, yeah, it's been the best since then, even if it does have some problems of its own. But no game is perfect, there's always going to be issues. Hello Bovaretta H. Crinkly. It's lovely to see your beautiful face again. Welcome. Swickful says, I actually loved Final Fantasy 15. Still has the best rendered video game food. Oh yeah, the cooking was fantastic in 15. Like, it was just fun to like upgrade all your characters and with their different skills, and the cooking was simple, but like most games I don't really bother. Like, it gives you like stat boosts and stuff, but sometimes in 15 when you cooked a meal, you would have like you would talk to the other characters, or you would go off and there'd be like another quest that you could do to fight like a big beast, or to try and fish and find some legendary fish or whatever. I don't know, but it was pretty cool. If I was going to replicate that in a game, if I was going to make something like that, I probably would do the way they did it in 15, like put more effort into the food. But if we're talking foods, the Yakuza games, the Like a Dragon games, they're also really good for that kind of thing. Like, they have lots of restaurants and shops and stuff where you can get lots of food, and it's all really detailed, and They actually put effort into that sort of thing. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Stu says, yeah, they are ruining gaming. Just let gamers game. Yeah, I think it's all started. You had the DLC with the horse armor for, what was it, Oblivion, and then suddenly we had like DLC for every single game, and then it moved on. It was like, okay, now we've got season passes, so now you're not just going to get the DLC, you're also going to have to get like planned DLC that you've got no knowledge of, but hey, we want you to pay for it in advance anyway. And we'll tell you what's going to be in it later, but just pay us now, and then, you'll get your content. I promise it'll be good. I promise. And they still do the season passes today. They're still very popular. But then after that, it was more like live service kind of games where you're just constantly getting new costumes and game modes and maps. Some of them are free, some of them are not, but they keep encouraging you to play like the same game. So you're playing all the DLC, you're playing the season passes, you're doing all the live service stuff, and it's like you pretty much need to dedicate your life to like one game. A game like Dreams, like this, it's like it didn't really have any of that. It didn't have DLC, it didn't have season passes, it didn't have the proper live service monetization. I feel like it works with this kind of game, obviously, because if you're going to support a game for so many years, you kind of need to have some kind of financial model. But then you look at stuff like No Man's Sky, like I think all of their expansions are free, and I guess they just make money from people buying the game and for different consoles, or just picking it up for the first time because there's so many new expansions. There's always something new to play. Like, I've still not bought it yet. Maybe one day I'll buy it once its 50th expansion comes out. Who knows? So, it can work. The free model can work if you charge for the game. But it feels like gaming's heading in a route where if we are going to use these Game Pass kind of games, PlayStation Plus kind of games, it's like if you're not buying the games outright, then you're going to have to support them some other way. So through DLC or expansion packs or season pass content. Feels like there's good ways to do it and bad ways to do it. But I'm not very optimistic about gaming lately. I feel like a lot of Microsoft and Sony's output is probably going to go more towards these kind of monetization routes, but I don't get a lot of time to game these days anyway, so even if I could just get like 2 or 3 big games a year, I think I would be pretty happy. So I bought Resi 4 Remake, I got Final Fantasy 16, I still to get Spider-Man 2, so it could be Spider-Man 2, it could be Alan Wake 2. That would be good enough for me. And then you've obviously got games like Dreams, or COD, or FIFA, or whatever, that you can just play the whole year anyway. So I'm kind of prepared for less games, but I hope they keep the quality up. I hope that doesn't get diminished. Dell says, my mate said the graphics on Modern Warfare 3, they're worse than Modern Warfare 2, which is insane. I thought it was all the same engine. Yeah, that is crazy. If they were going to just reuse a lot of the content from the previous game, it would look at least as good. But who knows? Who knows what they've done? If they've tried to implement new ideas but they couldn't get as much memory, so that they reduce detail, I don't know. It's all very strange. I don't know what's going on. Bovaretta says, horrific, don't make me get my lawyers involved. No, I said beautiful. I think you misheard me. I think there was a glitch in the system where it manipulated my voice and it said horrific. I assure you, that's not what I said. I promise. Hey Crick Vulture, welcome to the stream. DLC can be great. Witcher 3's DLC is better than many full games. Yeah, I've heard that. I still need to play Witcher 3 and DLC. I think that's good examples of when they can actually do things right. And then you've obviously got Phantom Liberty, the new expansion for Cyberpunk, which is meant to be really good as well. I just need to get back to that game, and then I'll probably complete it, and then maybe do a new save, and if I still feel like I'm interested in it, then I may get the expansion. I don't normally buy expansions or DLC. I feel like they're a bit of a waste because they charge a lot of money and they don't give you that much content. You know, you maybe play it for like 2-3 hours. But in the case of like The Witcher and Cyberpunk, I feel like they probably give you at least 20 or so hours of good content. So it's probably worth it in the end for those kind of games. But they're more like the exception to the rule. About games, hey, welcome to the stream. Could you please try my game in Dreams? It's called The Forest Kingdoms. Yeah, that sounds good. Let me web swing out of this, and I'll give it a quick look. The Forest Kingdoms. Let's see. The Forest Kingdoms. This one here. Is this the right one? Let's go on. I'm not playing with sound today because I'm doing like a sort of like a podcast thing. I'm probably going to take the audio from this and splice it up into videos. So that's why there's no sound here. My chat keeps disconnecting. I don't know what's going on. I might have to reset the chat here. Hold on. Keeps connecting and disconnecting. I don't know why. I don't know what's wrong. But yeah, there's a lot of great games that I've not played. So we talked about Baldur's Gate 3. There's also Diablo 4. I don't know if anybody is into the Diablo games. For me, they're kind of fun. I'm not really interested in the story, and I feel like it could probably get a bit repetitive after a while. But it's one of those games where you can replay it over and over again, and it will probably give you tons of content with like different characters. So it's another game that you can probably play for a long time, I think. I've never really owned any of the. Well, I own Diablo 3, I should say, but I haven't really played too much of it though, so I can't really comment on it. I've been looking at trying to get into Diablo 2 as well, seeing the old school kind of style of Diablo. But it's just a time sink of a game. I think you really need to get invested in it. I think if you want to get into these kind of games, don't play other games, just play these ones. And I already sink a lot of time into Dreams, so I don't really see how I can play other games like that are like they need to take up all your time. So yeah, we spoke about Final Fantasy 16. I feel like it deserves a shot at being Game of the Year. Don't think it will be, but a lot of people aren't really talking about it, so I feel like it's probably not going to have much of a shot. One game that was on Xbox exclusive, is called Hi-Fi Rush. It's basically like an action platformer, a bit like Devil May Cry, but it has like a rhythm game spin on it. So you have to attack to the beat of the music, and if you do that, I guess you do more damage and create better combos and things. And it's a really colourful world, looks really nice, really cel shaded. I played it a little bit. I feel like it maybe got a little repetitive because if you play an action game, you expect just to like spam the square button or whatever. In this game, you can do it, but it's not the ideal way to play the game. So you have to like press square to the beat and do your combos and dodge to the beat as well. So I feel like it's a really good game, but it's also a game that might annoy some people because you have to pay attention to the rhythm, and it just adds that extra layer of difficulty as well to the game. But it is a really good game. It's from the developers who made The Evil Within, so it's quite a different kind of game, especially with use of colour and everything. But I only played a couple of levels on it. Like I said, it can get a bit repetitive if you have to keep doing it to the beat. I think it's a really good concept, but it's not going to be for everyone. It's going to annoy some people, I think. So I think in terms of style, I think it could definitely win some awards for innovation and for graphics, the style. But I think overall, it's probably not going to keep everyone happy. So I feel like it's probably it's got a good shot of winning other awards, but I don't think Game of the Year. We also had, like we said, the Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom, which I haven't personally played, so I can't really talk about it. But I think based on the previous Zelda game, it's pretty much like a 10 out of 10 experience. And I think that's kind of what you would expect from Nintendo. Just this really high quality. So I think like Baldur's Gate 3 definitely has a lot of people talking about it, saying that it could win Game of the Year, but obviously Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, that's going to be pretty hard to beat. I think it's going to come down to those two. On one hand, you want Baldur's Gate 3 to win because it's kind of like the dark horse. It's a really good game, but not something you would expect to win, but it's getting a lot of good praise. But then you've got Nintendo, and they're just full of quality all the time, and it does get a little bit boring when you see like the same kind of games winning all the time. But I don't feel like we should think that way, because at the end of the day, Nintendo created, let's say, another masterpiece. So credit where it's due. I think it's probably likely to win, but I think Baldur's Gate 3 will be very close. So it'll be interesting to see how that one goes. Then we had Spider-Man 2, which I've not played yet, but I did watch the story. The story was decent. The missions look like a lot of fun. Seems to be an incremental improvement over the original Spider-Man game, and Miles Morales as well. So I don't think it will win Game of the Year. I think other games are probably got a bit more of a unique twist on things. But again, like I said with Hi-Fi Rush, it's probably going to win awards for other elements, but I don't think it's going to win Game of the Year. I think it's more of a predictable game. You know what to expect. It does things really well. Is it going to be good enough to beat everyone? I don't think so, but I'm sure a lot of people are going to say it will be if they're big fans of obviously PlayStation. There was Mortal Kombat 1 as well. I'm not really into fighting games, but it's always good to mention. We also had Street Fighter 6 as well, but again, I never played these games, so I can't really comment too much on them. But I feel like the fighting games, they don't really get as much praise as they probably should. I feel like they're great games, but because they are fighting games, it's like giving FIFA Game of the Year. Like, you're not going to do that because it's just not what you would imagine for Game of the Year, you know. Crick Vulture says, I enjoyed Armored Core 6 and Lies of P this year. They won't be Game of the Year though. My money is on Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah, that seems like the safe bet. But yeah, like Armored Core 6, again, a lot of people are forgetting about that game. It got really great reviews, but for some reason, it's just kind of got washed away. It's a bit like Final Fantasy 16. It's like a great game that's just somehow it's just been forgotten, and I don't know why. I don't know if it's because Armored Core 6 is pretty difficult. It's not a Souls game, but it's still pretty difficult. It's made by I think the director of Sekiro, so it has a lot of verticality involved. And apparently it's not a Soulsborne game, but because it is really difficult, you can make comparisons, you know. But yeah, it's another game that I'm interested in checking out. Probably won't buy it though, but yeah, it's another shout for Game of the Year contender at least. And Lies of P, I tried a little bit of Lies of P, maybe like the first 3-4 chapters. And again, it's another Soulsborne game. You know what to expect. It's got a Pinocchio sort of android twist to it, which made it probably more interesting. But I don't know if that would win Game of the Year either, like you said, because it's just rehashing the Soulsborne formula, just with a different setting. You know, it doesn't really do much of its own. You know, everything you see is basically Dark Souls and Bloodborne. You know, it's just sort of copy and pasted, and then they've changed it a little bit. But yeah, it was a good game. Lots of good games this year though. But only one can win. So we mentioned Street Fighter 6 and also Mortal Kombat 1. There's also the strategy games, so like Pikmin 4. I've never played any of the Pikmin games, so I don't know if I would even like them. I think it's like you gather your team and you sort of use their different powers to overcome obstacles and enemies and things like that. I played a game that was kind of similar to it. It was like Little King's Story. It was on the Wii, and I think they made a port onto the Vita. But the Vita one was terrible. It had so much slowdown, so much frame rate problems that it just made it unplayable for me. But it was the same kind of thing. You sort of built your town, you collected all different warriors with like different abilities, and some people were just there to like dig holes and things like that. And it seemed like a decent little game. A bit I was going to say clunky, but it's a bit awkward, I would say, to control, because you have to like manage all of these little units, and the camera's not always so good. So I don't know if anyone's played the Pikmin games. Maybe it's better than Little King's Story, but is that going to be Game of the Year? Who knows? What else did we have? So we talked about Resident Evil 4 Remake. Like I said, it's sad that Dead Space and Resident Evil 4 are probably going to get shafted because the remakes, which is a really big shame, to be honest, because I don't know about Dead Space. I don't know how much they changed and improved, but Resident Evil 4 Remake definitely did a lot of interesting stuff, and so it definitely deserves to be considered. I don't think it would be very fair if they just said, oh, we're not going to consider it anymore because it's a remake. I think, yeah, you want to give original ideas more, but at the same time, I don't know, I feel like some games are just really well made to the point where it's probably worth giving them some accolades. Swickful says, I don't put too much credibility into these game awards. Game of the Year is whatever you want it to be. Exactly. It's like anyone can give a game Game of the Year, right? So it's like you could say Dead Space was Game of the Year because this particular website gave it Game of the Year, you know? So then next year they'll release an edition that has all the DLC and they'll just say Dead Space Game of the Year edition, and that's what they'll do for every game. Every game will be Game of the Year. It's not the one, official Game of the Year. The Game Awards, they're not the only ones that are giving out Game of the Year. I think there's another, like the BAFTA awards and stuff. Like they'll give out a Game of the Year, and there's so many institutions that will do the same thing. So pretty much everything will get a shot of being Game of the Year. What is the official #1 Game of the Year? Yeah, you're right. There's no one thing, but it is good to debate. But everyone's got different styles of games that they prefer, and obviously not everyone's got all the consoles. Like, I don't have a Switch, I can't comment on anything like that. I've only got a PlayStation. I've got an Xbox, but for Game Pass, I'm only really playing the games on that. Like Starfield, for example, a lot of people were saying that's Game of the Year, hands down, the best game ever made. The reviews don't seem to agree, and from what I've played of Starfield, it's like I'm not going to bash it. Like, I'm mostly a PlayStation gamer, but I can still judge games on Xbox, and for me, Starfield was a good game. I actually liked it more than I thought I would. Because if you like games like Borderlands and other Bethesda games, it's the same thing really, just in space, right? And I had a decent amount of fun with it, but it's not like, the missions were fun, or the story was engaging, or the characters were, full of personality. Like, I feel like there's a lot of flaws with something like Starfield, but just playing the game, it's alright. It's a good time sinker. I could appreciate it, but definitely not Game of the Year. Definitely not a 10 out of 10 experience. Like, I think a 7 out of 10 from most people was probably fair, because it's a good game. I would give it an 8 because I really enjoyed it a lot more, but that's just me, because I like RPG games. I like to talk to people. I like to increase my stats and explore and find new weapons and gear and find other quests and things. Like, I enjoy that, but it's more from like a gameplay point of view. Like, it's just fun to waste some time, but in terms of all the individual aspects, I feel like the graphics aren't that great, but I don't really care about that. Obviously you've got like the characters that are a bit funny, and the missions, they're not exciting. They're not that crazy. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of games that people think are Game of the Year, but other opinions will say otherwise. Crook Doctor says, true Swickfoot. Also says, oh yeah, Dead Space 2. What an insane year it's been. I might actually play Dead Space, the remake, sorry. If you don't have Game Pass, you can also get it on EA Play, and I think right now it's on offer. Like, 1 month normally costs $3.99, but you can get it for like 79p, which is pretty damn good, less than £1. And you get a month, and you can play Dead Space, you can play Need for Speed Unbound. In fact, you can play all the Need for Speed games. You can play all the Battlefield games. You can play Unravel 1 and 2. They're good games. There's loads of games you can play. So if you're interested in that, there's a good deal there. So I might play it there. I'm not like super excited, because I feel like I've already played the game, and I feel like it's not going to change enough, because I played like the intro, and it's basically the same thing. The same things happen. The bit when you go in the elevator and the necromorph tries to go through and break it open, like, everything's the same, like the exact same detail, almost the exact same animations. So it's like, it's good for new players, and if you've forgotten a lot about the original game. But I played the original game about 3-4 times. It's probably one of the best action horror games since Resi 4. But I might give it a go. Since it's 79p, I might play it on the PS5. About Games says, for me as an indie games lover, Season, A Letter to the Future was really good. I think I've not seen the gameplay from it, but I remember seeing it on the pre-order section of the PlayStation Store. It was like there was a character who was sitting in a field with their bike, I guess, and it did look like a nice, kind of calm, charming kind of game. I'm not like super into indie games. It's like it's not that I just don't like indie games. I do like there's certain indie games that I do really like, but it's there's a lot of stuff that's like it's good, like the gameplay's really good, but it just doesn't keep my attention for more than like an hour or so. But it depends on the game. I'm mostly, even with like big AAA games, I'm not always like super invested in all of the games, you know. Like I'll play what I can, but I'm mostly into like Resident Evil and Final Fantasy. Everything else is good, like Spider-Man's good, Death Stranding is kind of good, but I'm not like, oh, I love all these games. It's like if I really pinpoint it, it's Resident Evil and Final Fantasy, and then you can kind of extend that to like Silent Hill and some other RPG games, but not quite as much. If I'm being like super strict, you know. Blasphemous 2 looks great too. I want to play that. That's another game I need to play. I played the first one, and it was really good, but I was only playing it like very briefly just to see what it was like. But yeah, it's like Hollow Knight. I need to play that game as well before the second game comes out. But like I said, it's these kind of games where I'm not against indie games, but it's hard to keep my attention. I think it's a me problem, you know. It's keeping my focus to play these games when they don't have like big fancy movie like cutscenes and characters to keep me playing. About Games says, I also want to play Chants of Sennaar and the most recent, is it Jusant? Really excited. Yeah, Chants of Sennaar, I think that was like the one that was in the sand kind of desert, right? Again, I've not really looked into the gameplay. But that Jusant, I played it on Game Pass just very briefly, just to see what it was like. And it seems good, like nice graphics. It's got a unique gameplay spin. You're basically like climbing up this massive mountain or rock, and there's different ways you can use your gear to basically traverse all the way up, and you can find like little bits of the story like from letters and little computer things that you can read. But again, I didn't play too much to know how it's going to develop. Seems interesting. It's a bit like Death Stranding though, because you're having to like connect yourself to the wall, and you can put like additional connections depending on if you want to swing or if you need to go around and up through an obstacle. So yeah, it does look really good, but it's not the kind of game that I'm like super invested in. It's something that I'll play, but I don't know if I would be as excited for it as maybe some of you guys are. But like I said, that extends to AAA games as well. Like, I'm not always going to be super into every game. I don't know if it's just my taste in gaming or if I'm getting kind of bored of gaming, because a lot of things are kind of the same, you know? Like, a lot of things are just like open world, collecting things and just bloating it full of content that we don't actually need, you know? So I'm not super excited about the future of gaming. That's why I'm probably more interested now in like Dreams and like developing my own games and things. So, as you know, I'm making a classic survival horror game. I'm also just announced that I'm going to make a more modern first-person survival horror game that's kind of inspired by Silent Hill. And I've also got like some smaller projects on the go, like for some RPG games, because like I said, I love Final Fantasy. So there's a few games that I want to make in the RPG space as well, and I'm finding that more interesting, more engaging now, to think about making my own games rather than just playing other games, you know. But every once in a while there will be a good game that will come out that will interest me, or a good indie game that will take me by surprise. But I just feel like the days of the past where I used to play like a new game like every month or every couple of weeks, I feel like that's kind of over now, because most games, they're just not interesting me anymore, which is a shame. About Game says, I know what you mean. Yeah. But making games, even though it's a lot of hard work and sometimes you just want to sit back and relax, I still find it's very therapeutic for me. Like I really enjoy bringing things to life. And if I'm not satisfied, oh, I got squished. If I'm not satisfied by some games, I can always say like, oh, I can make it better. I'll make my own version. And even though it'll probably never be as good, it'll still be fun to try, you know. But one of the things that I was going to talk about today as well was like, one thing that always holds me back about making games in Dreams is character creation. Basically, like if you look at the games that I'm playing now, these are quite simple characters. But if I want to make a realistic game, it's going to take a lot of work to not just to make the characters, but to make them look good and to feel confident in actually sculpting them and animating them. And you know, I used to be afraid of like sculpting like objects and texturing, but I finally learned how to do it, and I definitely got a lot better at it. So I feel like I just need to basically just do it. I need to just figure out a way that I can sculpt characters and actually attach like animations and gameplay and everything to them. So that's something I'm going to do basically now. So with the Silent Hill inspired game that I'm planning to make, I'm going to make a lot of really gruesome creatures. I think that will really help as well, because if you're trying to make characters and they don't look so perfect, you could just say like, oh, it's a monster. It's supposed to look grotesque. It's not meant to be perfect. It's meant to look a bit ugly. So that's probably what I'm going to do with that. I'm also going to extend that as well to. I wanted to make like other kind of creatures just to get more practice. So I was going to make like a Pokemon style game and just make some really crazy kind of things. All in the name of getting better, you know. And hopefully I can bring that into my more realistic games, including the classic survival horror game. I want to make all the zombies and the main characters, and it's always difficult because I just don't feel confident enough in making these kind of sculpting and rigging everything together and animating and putting gameplay systems on them. That's like the only thing I need to do. Like music as well, I'm not really good at making music, but I can get by on that. But making characters, no, I can't. If I want to make games, I need to be able to make stuff that looks and plays well. So making the effort to get better at sculpting characters and everything, it's basically like the next step for me. And if I can nail that, then I should be able to feel more confident about all the games I want to make from now into the future. And it's kind of like what I used to do in Little Big Planet. I didn't really make games. I used to just make animations, and that's something I want to do in Dreams as well. But the fact is, in Dreams, everything's really complicated. Like, to make characters, like I said, it's not so easy. And I feel like if I can nail that, I can not just make games, I can also make animations again, which will be really good. I'll probably make something like this, look. Not so detailed, but gets the job done. Crooked Vultures, oh, hold on, sorry. About Game says, like, I really miss the PS3 era when Sony was experimenting with different genres. Like, there was a balance between indies and AAA games like LBP and Uncharted was existing in the same time. Yeah, and if you think even further back with like the PS2, we had like Jack and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank. I know Ratchet and Clank still goes today, but like Sly Cooper, these kind of cartoony collectathon platformers, they were really popular. And then apart from Ratchet and Clank, they just sort of disappeared. It's like some things just come and go, you know. About Games also said, Train just gave me that wonderful vibe. I've still not played Train actually. It does look really good. Again, it's probably not my kind of game, but I'll give it a go. Same with this game here, this Vecta Majoris. This is by an developer, and I guess he's been working on this for quite some time. But again, I'm not really into like space games, like when you control a ship. I like sci-fi games, but like spaceship games, not so much. But I'll always give something a try just to see what it's like. So Crooked Vulture says, my issue with making games is that I get bogged down in the details. If I can't get something working precisely how I want it, it drives me crazy. Almost always logic related problems. Yeah, for me logic is okay. Like I kind of got used to it with Little Big Planet, so I know how to do most things. It really just depends on like what you want to make, you know, like how complicated are you going to make something. Like see if I was going to make this game here with flying a ship, I'd probably have no idea how to do this and like how to make it feel good, you know, because you're going to have to use a lot of like math to make sure everything feels good, you know. So that's why I just try and stick to what I know and what I want to make. So you know, if these spaceship kind of games become like super popular, I won't feel like the need to make one myself. I'll just stick to survival horror games. In RPG games, it's like it's going to be a little bit difficult because I'm going to have to create a battle system. I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to work with like experience points and applying all that and balancing out the game. But I feel like those things I can work with. But one thing I've kind of learned with making games is that most of the time it's really just about turning things on and off, you know? Did you kill this enemy? Yes. Did you get killed? Yes. Did you just open this door or this treasure chest or did you pick up this item? You know, it's just like yes or no, you know? It's only when you want to start making like really complicated combat systems, when there's like trigger radiuses and timing issues and you got to get all your animations right and you don't want them to clash with each other. It's like I'm just really not going to focus on making games like that. I feel like it's just too complicated. So the survival horror, the classic one, is easy to make because it's like time controls are easy. That actually restricts kind of how you play, and putting in the camera angles and stuff is easy. So I just need to figure out how can I shoot a zombie, how can a zombie grab me and bite me, and these kind of things. Different enemy types react differently. And then this first-person Silent Hill inspired modern game is going to kind of just be the same, really, you know, like because you know how to make a character walk around, you know how to open doors, you know how to pick up things, and then it's just a case of, for me, it's just the combat, like designing the characters and the enemies, but also making sure the combat flows well with good animations and good timing with the logic and things like that. Like I don't know how to make like really complex systems, but I try to keep things as simple as possible, really. Crooked Vulture says, example, I wanted to a really tight feeling platformer character, but whatever I did, it always felt floaty and slid off the edge of platforms if I was too close to them. Oh yeah, I mean, like platformer games are extremely, extremely difficult to make. Because if you think of things like Mario, he's like, that's Nintendo quality. Like, they make absolutely perfect platforming gameplay. And they make it look easy, but it's not easy. Because how many platformer games can you name that gets close to Mario? You probably can't name many. Because, like, the old Sonic was good, but is it as good as Mario? Probably not. And Little Big Planet, for example, like technically the platforming is terrible because it's dead floaty, and it has the thing about Little Big Planet is it's got more some charm of its own. Like you can swing on things, and there's lots of different gadgets you can use, but platforming itself, like the jumping, like it had its niche. Like people used to make like challenge platformer levels where you had to like jump precisely on things, or the floaty jump actually was used in the mechanics of the game. But I think if you're talking about, you know, is this as good as Mario? Probably not. So yeah, like I wouldn't even know how to make a good platform character. I guess like the only advice I could give you is just make your character have more weight, you know? Like everything just feels heavier. And you can do that with animations as well. Like a lot of people, they get quite lazy with animation, you know, they just want to make a character that can run and jump, but if you don't animate it properly, it won't give off the same vibe. And again, it depends what kind of platformer you want to make. Like if you want to make something that has that tight system, or if you want to make something that's a bit more action based with like swords and guns and stuff, you can maybe get away with a few different things. But yeah, platformers, I stay away from platformers. Like I couldn't even make a platformer in Little Big Planet. It was far too difficult. So um, for me, I would never make a platformer, or even a 2D side-scrolling game. I think I would just make terrible games. 3D is where it is for me, and simple combat systems. Just point like the original Resident Evils and Silent Hills. You just pointed your weapon and fired. Like that's good enough for me. Like I don't want to make a Devil May Cry system. No, thank you. No, thank you at all. Cryptvox also says if you don't understand the cause of the problems, you can't troubleshoot it. Yeah, it's difficult to look at logic and sometimes figure out what went wrong. For me, it's just trial and error, and eventually I'll get a eureka moment where it's like, oh, it's not working because of this, or it's like this logic works, but it conflicts with the other piece of logic. And the more complex you make your logic, the more difficult it is to keep track of everything. So yeah, it's not easy at all. I can feel the frustration. Boveretta says logic issues drive me absolutely insane. Like how my NPCs always violently shake when you get close to them. No idea how to sort it out. Probably collisions, because if your character is colliding with the NPCs, they're probably going to, the collision system's probably going to shake quite a lot. So you can, there's a few other ways you can deal with it. You can either just turn off the collisions for these characters, like if they don't need to be collided with, but then you can walk through them, so that might cause another issue. Or you can create like your own custom collisions, because in Dreams it's like every object has like a weird kind of collision around it. Whereas if you just make your own custom one, like you make a block, and then you make a block, an invisible block, whenever you hit that block, then that's your collision, you know. But Dreams has a lot of problems with collisions as well. Like if you do something too fast, like if you can collide with a wall and you can run right through the wall. So it's not a perfect system in Dreams, but yeah, there's a few things you could maybe try. Turning off collisions or just trying to make your own custom one. That should help you Correct Voxer says, true, the simplest things are actually complex. Oh yeah. I don't even want to imagine how they, like, the specifics behind making Mario jump and feel so good. Like, they must have fine-tuned that. Like, that's all they lived and breathed. Like, 0.1, just incrementing things, and it's crazy. And that's like a 2D game if we're talking about the old Mario games. Trying to figure out the 3D Mario games, like how do they control so well? It's even more difficult to comprehend. Like when Mario turns and things, it's almost like a car. You have to have like a weight to it, and different speeds create different animations and different directions. It's madness. You'd have to really love platformer games, like that Trip's Voyage on Dreams. It's like he probably studied those games and he probably loves those games. That's why I'm sticking to RPG and survival horror games, because like at least I know how they function in a way. Like I'm interested in it. So yeah, just stick with what you really like and what you can be patient enough with. Crooked also says it was mainly the fact it slid off the edges that drove me nuts. Never figured it out to this day. I know that in the Crash Bandicoot remakes they had a problem where instead of using a box collision for Crash, they were using a sphere. So whenever Crash went to like the very edge of a platform, he would just slide off. And so that was a bit of a rookie mistake, because it's like if you do a sphere collision, it's going to make things difficult. Whereas a square is going to keep you, attached. But also in Dreams, it's like they have their own weird collision system, so it's probably slidey because of some. If you look in the tweak menu, there's probably, I think there is like a bar that you can do for like slidiness and on surfaces and things like that. So I don't know if it's related to that. But yeah, making tight controls and making games, it ain't easy. Bovaretta says, on the other hand, when you finally get it to work, it's such a good feeling. Oh yeah, finally, that eureka moment, it's nothing better. Crook says, shaking NPCs are so crinkly. I know, you should just keep it in, Bovaretta. Get your shaking characters, that'll be like an expected feature, I think. Bovaretta says, games aren't good if they don't have at least a little crinkle. That's true. You really need the crinkleness. Otherwise, what's the point, right? So yeah, for me, it's like I need to figure out how I'm going to sculpt characters and texture them and rig them to make them good for animations, and basically just get everything working with the logic. So the character and the enemies, they play off each other quite well. Bovaretta says, tell that to Small Human, he's the developer. He's the one doing all your bidding, doing all the work for you. Crooked says, yeah, the collision is definitely part of it. You have to turn off the collision of the puppet's parts to stop it spamming out. But then the default collision shape is like an elongated pill shape. Yeah, that's what I mean. The puppets in Dreams, they have really weird collisions, so you're better off just turning that off, like, entirely. Don't use it. And then what I use is like I just use like an invisible box, and that's kind of like my own collision system. Because in the subject demo, even though I'm going to improve it, originally if I just had like the character collide with the zombie, they would have collisions like on their body, but on like their arms and their hands and their heads and everything. So if you collided with a zombie or you collided with a wall, sometimes like the heads would like be pulled and the arms would stretch out, and it would just be an absolute mess. So I don't think it's a good collision system to use unless you're just making a game that's very simple. As soon as you're complicating things with enemies and other obstacles, it's best just to make your own collisions. Like say you make like a rock, the collisions on the rock are going to be everywhere by default. But if you just put it like how you want it to be, you know, because like some games you don't even want to have the default stuff in, because if you jump on the rock, it's like it might break the game. So you just want to like create your own barriers and things. Boveretta says my NPCs aren't even puppets, they're just like sculpts with a look at gadget that faces you and it just randomly shakes for some reason. Probably as the collision though. I'll do some testing. Yeah, try to think. So they only vibrate and shake when they are actually looking at you. It could be like, remember in Little Big Planet where it was like if you moved something, it would take into effect the denseness of whatever it is. So maybe because they're moving, it's adding the gravity to them, so they're kind of wobbling about. They're not. They basically need to be like stiff, you know, like they have to have a gadget on it that's like, don't move, you know. Don't let other factors affect you. Just look at the character and don't don't let things go a bit wobbly. But it could be that. It could, if it's not the character, it could be something in the environment maybe that's moving them. I don't know. We need to test and see what's happening. Crook says, I wish I could steal John Beach's brain for a few years. Oh, that would be madness. You'd be able to take over the world, I think, with that brain. Maybe the look at strength is too much. Tweak it a few percent. Could be that. Yeah, it's like so many little tweaks and things that you'll just need to experiment with until you figure out the problem. But no doubt you'll figure out the problem, and then like a few months later it'll happen again and you'll forget how you done it and you'll need to start all over again. Typical. That's how it goes sometimes. Because you don't think you're going to forget. You think, oh, I've solved this problem. I'll never forget this now. I'll always know what to do. But that's probably not going to happen. But yeah, for me, like I said, I just want to get sculpting these enemies, and I'm going to just make lots of creature designs for practice. And because of that, I might go back to an original animation, an animated series that I wanted to make when Dreams first came out. And it was a very simple one. It was just about shapes and just like a really hostile world with like different shapes, and they all have like different crazy personalities. But when I got Dreams, it was like I didn't know how to sculpt, I didn't know how to do facial animation, I didn't know even the environment. I couldn't make simple things. So if I made a tree, it was like a cylinder with leaves that were like green spheres on top. So I was like such a noob back then. I feel like now I can actually create the characters, I can animate them. Now that I understand how Dreams works, like you can't really manipulate the facial animation properly. It's more like a dummy that you can make, or you can do like a stop motion style where you create like multiple different faces and things. So I'm probably going to do stuff like that and just have fun with it. Just make like these really exaggerated faces. Like if you ever watched Adventure Time, I've been watching some recently with my son, and it's basically like the amount of faces they make, it's like it's not normal, you know. It's like so exaggerated, and it actually adds to the humor. So I think I'm just going to make like the shaped characters, but don't make it too realistic. Like, oh, their mouth can only move, you know, a certain amount. Their eyes can only do a certain, you know, thing. You know, it's like no, they can do anything they want. You know, like if their face puffs up or their mouth comes all the way out or their eyes stretch all the way around their head, it's like really exaggerated, and I think it makes it a lot more fun. Because originally I was just trying to make like funny jokes and stupid things, but I wasn't actually making a really good representation of it from the animation point of view. So I feel like now that I'm making characters again, I'm definitely going to experiment with like some simple animated episodes. Probably not going to see that until next year though, because it's just an idea that I've got right now. and I'm still working on this survival horror challenge to make this game for next Halloween. Got a lot of work to do there, but definitely need to conquer my inability to design and sculpt and rig up the different characters and monsters and things. So I feel like that's my last step. If I can get that right, then I'll be able to make any kind of game or animated series that I want, really. Boveretta says they're not physical either. I don't think, since it's a rotator, it doesn't actually work with physics at all, I think. Probably to do with strength, yeah, or dampening. Yeah, dampening is like, yeah, that'll keep it nice and tight, but at the same time, it's like it'll affect the speed of the rotation as well. But yeah, even if you don't have physics, I guess it's like, I remember Little Big Planet, where if something spins, it will just keep spinning and spinning and spinning unless you actually control it. So there's probably something there, yeah. Boveretta says, I did manage to make it a lot better since Cyber Spy 1, so there is an improvement. Yeah, just got to experiment, see what needs to be done, and I'm sure you'll get to the bottom of it soon. Crooked says, that's what happens when I do solve a problem. I immediately run into a brand new one. Yeah, it never ends, does it? Like, I'm pretty confident about how to make a survival horror game now, but I'll always forget, like, how did I do that? Like, I need to go back to, like, an older scene, older level, and try and look at the logic and go like, oh, okay, so I made it like this. Because with logic, there's multiple different ways that you can make things, so, there's no one way. Things can still work by doing different methods, and then it's like the entire game is all messed up because it's like, I've used one method to do something and then another method to do the same thing, and it's like it wasn't necessary. So it's good to have like a universal gadget that you can refer to, so you can just repeat something or just change something up and remember how you actually did it, you know? So that's my plans. I'm going to try and do some animated stuff, but the focus is getting this Silent Hill inspired game done for next Halloween. Also get Subject done. Again, I just need to make like the monsters and the zombies, the characters. That's my Achilles heel. Once I can do that, the game's pretty much smooth sailing till it's finished. So I hope to get those two survival horror projects done next year. If I've got extra time, I might tease some of the RPG projects throughout next year. But I feel confident that I can get like a little basic animated series out, just something very simple and silly, and I'll just make it like a few short episodes. I don't know if they'll be like 2 minutes long or 5 minutes long or 10. It just depends how long it takes me to piece them all together. But it should be fun. Hopefully I can keep growing my skills that way as well. But yeah, I think that's all the topics that I was going to talk about today. I think the only thing that we kind of talked about, but not too much, was just the Yakuza games. But I don't know how many of you guys are into those kind of games. I just finished the Ishin one last night. It's like a samurai version. But if you've played one Yakuza game, you've played them all. It's basically like it's like crazy fighting. It's like you fight groups of guys or enemies, and you can pick up like a bicycle and use it as a weapon, and throw things through people's skulls, and it's mad, absolutely mad. But there's actually 2 new games coming out soon. There's they renamed Yakuza Like a Dragon to make it more like the Japanese name. So they've got a new one coming out, I think, on Thursday, called Like a Dragon Gaiden: The Man Who Erased His Name, which looks pretty damn fun. And then they've got another brand new game coming out next year in January as well, which is basically like Yakuza 8. But yeah, if no one's ever looked into these games, if you love your story games, if you love brawling kind of games, fighting lots of enemies with like wacky weapons, and it's full of content, full of funny content. Lots of activities you can do. You can actually play like old Sega games in the arcade, and there's other things like, you know, playing pool and darts and baseball and all these kind of things. But they always have tons of these kind of crazy mini games that you can use to make more money and improve your character and stuff like that. I'd love to make a game like that one day, maybe in Dreams, something that's more focused on action and story. But we've got so much to work on now. Hopefully I can start to, like I said, improve my character sculpting and get to a point where I'm more comfortable, and then I can finally, you know, develop a complete, well-rounded game, not just the environments and the story, but also get the characters and the enemies and boss battles and everything. That's something I really need to improve on. So I think I'm going to end the stream for today. It was great chatting with everyone again. We've discovered some of the Game of the Year's predictions. Talked about why Dead Space and Resident Evil 4 might not get looked at because of remakes. Final Fantasy 16 as well, it might not get much of a sniff because of some of the criticisms it got, even though I think it's an excellent game. Game Pass and PlayStation Plus, it feels like they're kind of helping the industry, but they're also ruining the industry at the same time. And with the rising costs of buying games outright and being, you know, so high and so expensive, it makes these services like Game Pass that much more attractive because you can save a lot of money. But at the same time, if you're not supporting the devs, you know, you're just going to get games that are maybe rushed out. They can just put them on. Oh, it's free on the service. You know, you need to accept that, and it will get patched eventually. But you're getting games for free. You know, you're not having to pay for games, so can't complain about them anymore. And yeah, just the plans for the characters and going into a new animation series. Hopefully that I can premiere sometime early next year. So that's everything for today's episode. It's great chatting with everyone again. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll probably have a new video up on Thursday again. I was actually applying for a writer's job, but there were complications and they closed the application period early, unfortunately. And I basically wrote out this big Final Fantasy video talking about how impactful it's been on me and everyone else. So I'm going to try and finish that up and release that on Thursday. So that's about everything for me. Thanks very much, Bovaretta. Crypt says 2 places and don't mind spending money. Food and games, you got what you pay for. Yeah, I mean, that is funny because we need food more, right? So we don't mind spending a little bit more money on food, especially throughout the week and throughout the month. But if it's a game, it's like, oh no, I can't. I would rather buy several McDonald's than play a really good game. But yeah, I think £70 is probably a bit too much these days. Maybe like even 40, you know, if it's a game you really want. But yeah, all these services and getting things on sale, I think that's the way forward for me these days. And just pick up like one major game, like, so I got Resident Evil 4 and Final Fantasy 16, so the next game I'm probably going to buy day one is Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, and that'll be worth it for me, even if it is 70 quid. I know I'm going to get a lot of value out of it at least. But yeah, so take care everyone, thanks for tuning in today. We'll be back for another episode next Monday, and I'll get that Final Fantasy video out on Thursday. So take care everyone, enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you all soon. Take care, bye.